Hello everyone, I am Toasty FPV. Welcome to my channel. I usually fly normal IRL quads. That's what I do daily, but today I wanted to show you guys a couple of different things. I wanted to start a small tutorial on Liftoff, mostly because I fly Liftoff daily actually. It's kind of how I warm up before flying my IRL quad, and also how I mitigate the cost of crashing 1,000 times to learn a new trick. Don't get me wrong, you're still going to crash in your real life quad by practicing and being good at liftoff flying, but it definitely helps you in learning muscle memory and ensuring that you don't crash every time you pick up your remote. So what I'm going to do today is kind of just go through the basics of flying in Liftoff. Of course, like I said, these are going to transfer or translate to real life, but we're going to focus all of the tutorial stuff on Liftoff for newbies that join who are trying to get into FPV and want to know how to play this game, and then also for those who are looking to fly quads in real life, the ones who are buying Liftoff specifically to learn how to fly a real life quad. So we're going to go ahead and pop into just a normal thing here. So I'm going to pop into a free flight, and we're gonna go to the first level available. I'm gonna grab one of my own little custom quads here, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. Alright, so you should be in here on the map. And then the reason I want to do Liftoff more than anything is just because, one, you're able to crash. That part goes without saying. Obviously, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg to get back in the air. And two, it has a built-in stick cam here, so you can see exactly what input I'm doing on the stick, which is good. So, as you can see, first off, let's just think about what the game Liftoff has to offer. Let's say this is your first time you've ever jumped in. Well, let's take a quick look here, right? One thing you're going to have access to is things that you have access to in real life, like beta flight. Well, not exactly beta flight. You're going to have your rates, which you're going to be able to tune and everything in beta flight. So as you can see here, we have our different PIDs and we have our different rates. You can adjust these to whatever fits you best. I have these adjusted to my real life quad, so I'm going to leave these the way they are. I'm not going to mess around with them too much because I already have them where I want them. You can also, let me come over here to options. We can take a look at the game options. There are a couple of things in gameplay you might want to look at. Like mine, I have a God mode enabled, right? For the first, I would say, 100 hours of me playing Liftoff, I actually had this turned off. And the reason is because I would want to know when my quad was actually breaking. At one point, you're going to get, comfortable enough with the quad and comfortable enough with flying that you'll know if and when you messed up. For instance, it'll usually make a sound of some sort, like a clicking noise or a clanking noise, and then you know that you've made contact. So that will be a pretty good indication that you crashed your drone and something probably would have broken. So at one point, I was just wanting to practice enough, and I didn't want to keep restarting at the starting point. So I have that turned on now. And honestly, for people who are just starting, I might even recommend you turning this on, just because for a while you're going to crash over and over and over again. It might be nice for you to just be able to turn the, roll over right quick with your stick and then just get right back up in the air and failing again and or succeeding, right, depending on how far in the process you are. So for God mode, I would leave that on if you're new. If you're pretty skilled and you're not going to crash into stuff all the time, maybe turn that off, and that'll, add a little bit of extra challenge for you. This is completely up to you. Some frames, like a dead cats, might not have these in here, but you do have the options to turn the props on or off. If you have a dead cat frame in real life, you're going to be flying without props in your view, so maybe you want to, get used to flying exactly with the drone you have. Camera noise, same with God mode. I had this turned on for a long time. It really helps simulate the analog static that you get in your goggles. So you can see there's quite a bit of grain there. I have that turned off because, while I'm using the simulator, I'm just more focused on learning the muscle memory of the stick, not so focused on the view. At this point, right, I've flown quite a few hours in real life, so I know what the static is going to look like. I'm used to it, and at this point, to be honest, I don't even really notice the static, so I turn that off just so I can focus on the muscle memory. On-screen display, I don't keep this on, but it does give you, as you saw, like a little compass, and then it helps you with staying level. If I go back, you can see that it'll have the level part. Let's see. So that way when you fly up, you'll know if it's level or not. Let's see. The next one, I usually have that turned off. I don't really like it too much. I mean, I could see that being great if you're new. I didn't really use it when I was new either. I kind of turned that off directly. I mean, I could see how that'd be useful. I just never really liked it that much. Stick overlay, I actually have this kept on so that if I ever, use a clip or something like that, somebody sees me flying, they can see exactly what I did. And then, of course, that's beneficial for this tutorial as well. So, battery simulation. This is great if you're trying to really go for like 100% realism where you're having to watch your battery level. Though, I'm going to be honest with you, this is not the best with battery simulation. It actually drops far slower than in real life. Like, I don't have a single battery that lasts as long as the battery in the simulator. So, really kind of, in my opinion, it's great, but it's kind of useless. It's a great idea, but not executed completely well. Always the tech stunts, that's going to be, if you're doing freestyle stuff, that's going to allow you to kind of like, for instance, we could do, actually I don't really want to go through all that just to reload. So but let's say you do like a barrel roll or something, or a backflip, it'll say perfect backflip, or then give you like maybe a score counter. Prop wash, I definitely want to have that enabled. I don't know why I have that turned off, but that's definitely going to affect your flight, right? That's kind of like, if you don't know what prop wash is, it's going to be like, let's say you're falling to the ground, right? And you gas it. You see that little shake? That little shake is exactly prop wash. It's like that little vibration. Kind of helps you simulate what it's like for when you're flying your quad and you're like, hey, you know what? I want to do a huge dive, and then you're like, I'm gonna kill it. But then oh look, so right there we actually didn't do it. There we go. Now there's some prop wash. 100% might actually be a bit too much, because I'm gonna be honest, I don't know, I don't even have a single quad in real life that is that jittery whenever I'm fighting wind. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'll enable it. Let's put it at like 50%. We'll see how that is. These other ones kind of more for like, I guess some of them, like this festival items for their monthly, like for instance Halloween, they have a bunch of pumpkins hidden around, so you turn this on, it'll allow you to go and find those. Race guides, pretty self-explanatory. Show game triggers, that one's like for certain maps have batteries that you can charge your quad or fix your quad depending on like the race mode you're in. Drone shells, hey, do you want to see where other drone pilots like online or bots in this case are flying? It'll show you a trail behind them. But then obviously there's a progression system for like leveling up and getting free items. If you're connected online, you'll be able to hide that from popping up if you want. I don't know why you'd want to do that though. Then you have all your basic graphic options. We all kind of know what that is. Same with audio. Now let's go ahead and hop into the tutorial itself. Alright, so we're going to get started. Alright, well if you've made it this far, that means you made it through my really boring example, or rather my really boring run through of the options there. But we're going to get to the actual flying now. So alright, so I'm going to assume going through this is your first time ever touching a quad, right? So one thing I didn't go over right quick was if you click A on your keyboard, if you're on a computer that is, I don't know what it is on the consoles, but if you click A, you can run through the different modes. So if you look up at the top left over here, you'll see that we're currently in acro mode. If I click A, we're in 3D. If I click A, we're in horizon, and then we're going to be in level. So this might be level right here, might be where you want to be if this is your first time ever flying a quad, right? I mean, I don't think anyone should go straight to acro, but I mean, to each their own. If you want to, this is a simulator, so you are allowed to crash 1,000 times, right, and not spend a dime. So if that's what you want to do, I say go for it. That's awesome. More power to you. You're definitely going to learn it eventually, right? So go for it. I do recommend starting in level though, only because it's going to be a lot more, I wouldn't say intuitive, definitely not more intuitive, but it's definitely going to be easier to understand, right? So if we use our sticks here, right? Now the left stick is going to be our throttle and our yaw. The right stick's going to be our pitch and our roll. Now, whenever we're in level mode, it's pretty limited, right? So we're going to use some throttle. We're going to get hovering in the air. But if I pitch all the way forward, it's not going to let me go down, right? It's not going to let me flip over. If I go backwards, it's just going to go, and it's going to stop at a certain angle. Same if I go right and if I go left. Now, that's a good thing when you're learning how a quad is going to be moving throughout the air. It's going to kind of give you a general idea of how the quad moves. It's going to be nowhere near as free as acro, but that's okay. We got to walk before we can run. So let's go ahead and give it a little bit of throttle. So using your left stick, apply about, I don't know, I'd say about 25% throttle. That's going to probably be right where your quad hovers. It's going to be dependent on the quad you're using, right? But as you can see, ours is hovering right about here. You might have to give it a bit more every now and then. You're going to get used to what that hover section or that hover threshold is. But doing what you're doing right here, not even touching the right stick, only messing with the left, keeping it at that 25%, 20% throttle range just to get your quad to hover, right? This right here is an important skill. It's a very important skill, actually. I would not sleep on being able to hover and understanding what level of throttle your quad is going to hover at. Because here's what's cool about this. Is like, even though this is a very limited mode, and it's going to be, I guess you could say, more beginner mode, that throttle threshold is still the same throttle threshold when you're using acro. So watch this. If we drop down and we swap it into acro mode and we give it that 25 and 30%, though I have to add a little bit here with my right stick, look at that throttle. It's still hover, right? It's still that small hover. Hover. So, and then of course, once you're used to it, you can give it a little gas. But look, that hover's still going to get the quad moving, right? So you're going to stick to level first. Get used to figuring out that little slight amount of throttle you need to give it just to get your quad in the air. Once you're there, you're good to go. You can just figure out, okay, we need to blip it here. We need to drop here for going higher. And you know what might even be better is if you find an object, right? If you can get close to an object after you've hovered for a little while, come over to one of these, maybe this little silo here. See if you can stop it at certain levels. Like, okay, I want to go to the third level. Let's get up to the third level, and then let's see if we can hold it there. How long can you get it to hold here? All right, let's see. Let's go up. Let's see if we can hover right at the top. Right, and you can see, okay, I have to give it a little bit of throttle when I want to make it rise, right? But then when I want it to stop, you have to figure out, okay, where is that exact hover threshold that I want it to stay at? You'll be like, okay, I want to drop, give it a little less throttle. And you'll get used to that, right? So figure out, using an object, doesn't have to necessarily be that one. How can I hover at a specific location? Find a point that you want to go to and then hover at that point. Let's say top of the tree. Okay, let's line up with the tree. Perfect. All right, which is perfect. Actually leads kind of into our next thing, which is, let's say you wanted to get from that tree, from this tree to that silo, right? Well, that's not very far. It seems easy. But if you're at this small angle right here, let's see. If I go up and I do my hover and I just simply use the right stick to go right, well, that's definitely doing what we want, right? I mean, we're able to get to the silo with no problem. We could get back to the tree with no problem. But the real thing you want to practice is after going hovering and figuring out, okay, yes, I know how to get my quad in the air and keep it basic in the air. Perfect. Well, that means you can go to step 2, which is working with the other axes on your controller, right? So here we have, let's go into this field right quick. Now, like I said, that the left stick is going to be your throttle and your yaw, and yaw is very, very important with using a quad, in my opinion. All right, that's what's going to allow you to go left or right, and just looking left or right. So if you want to go left, you go left. If you want to go right, you push right. And you know, you're going to get used to holding. If you notice, my stick is right at that hover threshold we found earlier, right? So you're going to be keeping it in that threshold. And then you're going to be practicing moving left and right. What I would say is, you know, let's say what we were doing earlier. Let's move over to our silo right quick. Let's say we're looking at this silo. You've practiced hovering at level 4 and choosing different levels to hover at. But now you want to be able to get to the tree. I would say, okay, well now since you've practiced staying stationary, practice keeping that stationary look, that same hover, but while turning. So, okay, now you got the tree. Perfect. You've gone left. Let's practice right while staying. Awesome. That's going to help you figure out how to look where you want to look on a single axis, right? Learning one axis is going to be easier than learning both at the same time, in my opinion, right? We all learn differently, but this is just my recommendation on how I would recommend you getting used to flying your drone in this game and in real life. Definitely recommend learning how to hover your quad in real life first, right? So there you go. After you're switching back and forth, you can keep practicing, okay? Maybe go down a level and see if you can hover it like right above the ground. So like, okay, we'll say at level 2, let's keep it here. Perfect. Let's go back. Look at the barn. Perfect. Right, now once you've worked on that, that's when I think you're able to move on to the next step, which is going to be learning how to include your pitch and your roll, right? So here we are. We're back at our hover. We're sitting in one spot. Perfect. We're able to look around. We've got that axis down. Awesome. Now, I would say let's work on pitch only. You've gotten these two. Let's work on just this axis here. Up and down on the right stick. Now, wherever you push forward, right? So let's go ahead and land on the ground. Let's look at just the sticks down at the bottom. So wherever this stick pushes forward, wherever your drone is currently facing, is where the drone is going to head towards. So if we're using this axis, right, and let's say we've looked, we're at the barn, and we look at this tree over here, you use this axis to turn it where you want to go, and you use this axis to push it where you want to go. So this helps you look. This actually makes it go there, right? So, okay, so we're looking at the barn. We get into our hover state. We look where we want to go, and then we push. And if you push too far, it's going to push to the ground, see? So there's a level, there's a certain threshold that you're going to want to do. Of course, that would make sense, right? You got to make sure that the drone is balanced and it keeps itself up in the air, that it's not pushing straight to the ground. And if you do go all the way like this, you need to make sure that you're giving it more thrust. So you can go all the way down, but make sure you're giving enough thrust to keep your drone in the air. Now with that said, let's go back to our hover state. Let's look where we want to go, okay? Very simple. So while we're in level mode, we're going to say, let's go to that tree all the way at the other end of the field. So all we got to do is look at it, push forward. We can even basically just keep our hover speed too. Up, you notice we're coming towards the ground. Just apply a bit more thrust. Bit more throttle, and you're good to go. As you can see, I'm not pushing all the way down. I'm just pushing it enough to get the drone moving towards where I want to go. If I want to start slowing down, I can pull back, keeping the same thrust. Oh, I think I was so focused on trying to show you guys that I didn't even realize. Let's try that again. So let's choose the barn instead. So we look where we want to go, keeping our hover speed. Look at that. Moving towards it. We want to slow down, pull back, and the opposite direction. So since we want to go backwards, we're going to pull back on our stick. We want to go forward. All right, we need to push forward, and now we're going forward. Now sometimes if you're falling down, like let's say you are falling towards the ground, just apply a bit more throttle. It's going to blip you right back up into the air. Now, let's say that you wanted to, let's say, combine them, right? That's the next step. So let's actually hop into that. So the next step would be combining those two axes. You have your front here, which is your pitch, right? So that's where I want to go, or stopping yourself, and then this is where you want to look, right? So looking around and how you're going to get there. So let's say you combine the two. That's going to be how you actually do circles, right? So you're going to have to adjust the pitch just slightly and add a little bit of roll, which is this axis. So let's actually throw that in and see what happens right here right quick. So okay, we're in our hover state, we're moving forward, and then if I simply just use roll by itself, as you can see, it just dips the quad. Yes, we're technically moving to the left, but that's not necessarily what we want, right? If we wanted to move forward and left, we would just do the same thing. Let's actually go right so we don't go out of bounds. So we'll do forward and right, and as you can see, which is great, if we wanted to go towards those trees to the right, we're definitely doing what we want, but it's not really nice, is it? If you were trying to make a nice video or just trying to keep it level, that's definitely not doing what you want it to do. So that is where you're going to bring both those axes, or rather all of the axes together. You maintaining your throttle, right? Doesn't have to be high powered. So going straight towards something we want. Let's say that tree right there. So let's stop at the ground. We'll hover up, look at the tree we want, push towards it just enough to get our quad moving, but not enough to keep it out of the air, right? We don't want it to fall out of the air. But let's say we want to move to that tree off to our right. Well, that's where you can kind of add both of them. So if we do this, we move right with our yaw, so our look around, and we push forward, that's how we can move the quad that direction. So if we want to move all the way to the left, we look towards the left while keeping our drone going forward, right? And again, as you notice, I'm not jerking this around. I'm keeping the same momentum, just kind of modifying the throttle a little bit and looking in a direction I want to go. And that's how you can actually circle this tree, right? So if you keep it going forward and you look around with the yaw, you can see, if you look at the pitch, you can see that I'm applying just a little bit of roll. And that's really good. That's kind of allowing that's the one that makes the drone dip like this. But that paired with pitch, as you can see, it kind of goes forward in a direction. So if you're looking around with this one, let's stop for a second. So if you're looking around with the yaw and you're pointing your pitch and roll kind of in the same exact direction, it's going to do a nice smooth circle turn. So let's try that again. Let's look at a hay bale here. So we can go forward looking at a hay bale, and then we can kind of roll a little bit the same way that we're looking. And you see how it kind of makes it a really nice circle. And if you look, we're still pitched forward, and if you look at our props, you can tell that the black prop is actually slightly lower on the screen than the white prop. And that's because it's still dipping towards it. If we want to switch right, we can look right and then pull right here, and it's going to do the same thing. Let's actually use this hay bale here. So we'll kind of go through them. We'll go right and then look right, again pushing forward, and then looking right and pushing right. As you see, I had to put a little bit more thrust into there so that I didn't fall. There you go. So now we're doing some figure eights by just simply looking left with the yaw and then doing that same movement with our pitch and roll. But as you can tell, even though the thrust, or the throttle rather, is below that 50% threshold and the pitch is above that 50% threshold, that's okay, as long as they're matching the exact same thing. And once you have these basic movements down in level mode, now you're able to kind of manipulate the drone and kind of get it to where you want it to go, right? So let's say we want to go through that barn there. So we'll just keep looking at where we want to go. Following the sticks follow one another. We're gonna need since we want to go up, we're gonna pull up. Need to give it a little bit of thrust. We want to look right and left, so we're gonna push forward while going. And there you go. And this is right now is basically flying like a DJI drone. This is the same controls as you would have with your basic DJI drone or any of your any drone that comes with level mode, honestly. So there you go, look at that, you're doing nice clean turns, and that's just barely moving. Not a lot of thrust is having to be used. Let's go through this gap here, look where you want to go, and then push forward to get our drone moving that direction. There you go. And that's step one, and now you've learned how to use level mode. I recommend doing this for a little while, just until you're very confident at getting the drone in the direction you want it to go. Like right there, a good challenge for yourself is, hey, can we fly through this barn door's upper level? So right here, just pointing straight at the drone, keeping that level thrust. And there you go. Packet's turning around, right? Let's just use some yaw. Now we're flying backwards. Now we can just push forward, release the or give it a little less throttle, and then when you're moving forward, just get it back to that steady throttle. Point towards where you want to go and turn using yaw at the same time. There you go. And that is how you use level. So next I'll go through horizon and acro mode, but I think that's going to be good for the basics, and I'll go ahead and get started on the other ones.